the sick leave system in the USA broken? Is Germany doing it any better? Here's what I'm thinking. Let me know down in the comments what you're thinking. Hey everyone, Donna here. Back in 2017, I made a video about work-life balance in Germany and the US, from sick leave to vacation to maternity leave, linked up here. And in this video, I'd like to look a little bit more in depth at the sick leave part in particular. A few weeks ago, I was chatting one evening with two of my German friends about how sick leave works in the US, and I was explaining to them that basically there is no federal law in the US that mandates how much sick leave, how many paid sick days a company has to give their employees each year. No federal law about that. Some individual states in the US do have laws mandating that a company needs to give employees a certain amount of paid sick time. But in states that don't have a law like that in place, the companies decide. There is the Family and Medical Leave Act, which is a federal law in the US that mandates that certain companies have to provide unpaid leave for things like illness and pregnancy, among other things. So that does exist at least, but notice that I said unpaid leave, and notice that I said certain companies. There are kind of like a bunch of asterisks attached to this law. Like, for example, that it only applies to company locations with 50 or more employees. And for this to apply to the employee, they must have worked at least 12 months at the company and more. So yeah, there are a lot of employees who aren't protected under this law in the US, even for getting unpaid leave when sick. I will put links and more information down in the description box below. How is this handled where you live? Let me know down in the comments. But now, let's go back and talk about paid sick leave in the US. As I mentioned, some states require companies to offer a certain amount of paid sick days to their employees, and some states don't have a requirement whatsoever. So as you might imagine, how many paid sick days per year the company offers their employees definitely varies. But it's not uncommon for employees in the US to get like 8 paid sick days per year. And it could be that after you work at the company for a certain amount of time, it could be possible for an employee to earn themselves more paid sick days per year. So if the employee works there for like 10 years, they could earn more sick days per year after that amount of time. But yeah, it varies from company to company. Some companies also allow these sick days to roll over to the next year, and some companies don't. Again, company to company. So at some companies, for example, if an employee only used 4 of their 8 sick days, then the next year they could carry over their 4 and then have 12. But at some companies, you can't do that. At some companies, the employees have to use their sick days in that year, and if they don't use them, they just lose them. And yeah, I was explaining all of this to my German friends that evening, telling them about how this system in the US basically forces you to guess about what your future health will be and try to figure out how you can use the paid sick days that you have as, I guess, wisely as possible. Like, for example, if you have a cold right at the beginning of the year, you might be thinking like, well, am I really sick enough to use 1 or 2 of those sick days right now at the start of the year? What are the chances that I might get sicker than this later on in the year, and then I'll really need some of those sick days and I'll regret having taken them now? Or, if you're thinking about getting pregnant, if your company does offer those rollover sick days, then you might think about trying to save up a bunch of sick days so that then you can take off a chunk of time when you give birth. And as I was telling my friends this, their facial expressions kept getting more and more concerned, and as the words were coming out of my mouth, I was realizing as I spoke, just how bad this sounds, like having to guess and estimate about your future sickness and having to work out if you are currently sick enough to use your days, and what are the chances that you might get sicker in the future, or you might get pregnant and give birth and need the days then. When I was in high school, I can remember having a cold or otherwise being what was considered like a little sick, and the general thought in society was like, well, come on, you're not that sick. You're not so sick that you can't go to school. Come on, you need to get used to going to school sick, because when you get older and you get a job, you won't be able to just stay home every time you're sick. And at the time when I lived in the US, this made a lot of sense to me. This was just how it was. It was just kind of understood and accepted. I understood that when I grew up and I got a real job, I wouldn't be able to stay home every time that I got sick. I understood, and I learned that toughing it out when sick and going to work when you were sick was just a part of being an adult. But now, living in Europe for 10 years, I hear that and I'm like, that's f***ed up. And yeah, that's pretty much the facial expression that my friends were making that night. Like, that's f***ed up. What is she telling us? Is this for real? Because in Germany, there is a federal law about sick leave. And I'm not going to get into the specific ins and outs of exactly how the law works here. Of course, it is more complicated than this. This is just over generalizing things. But yeah, basically, if you're an employee at a company here in Germany, if you get a short-term sickness or injury, you go to the doctor and the doctor writes you a sick note and you stay home sick and you get paid. And if you happen to catch the flu twice in 1 year and you get an upset stomach once and then you injure your foot, you go to the doctor each time and the doctor writes a note saying how long you should stay out of work, and you stay out of work, and as a company employee, you get paid for those days. In Germany, the company is not the one who gets to decide how much paid sick leave to offer their employees. And maternity leave is a whole separate thing. There is also paid maternity and paternity leave in Germany. And then my friends asked me but what if you break your leg in the US? Or what if you get quite sick and you need more than the number of sick days that you have left? And I was like, well, then you just don't get paid. You stay home and you have to go without payment. And at this point, they basically lost it. And they were like, no, that can't be. That can't possibly be. Just 8 sick days per year and then you stop getting paid? No, that can't be. How can you have stability? How can that be? That can't be. And there's one more part that I didn't even get to telling my friends that evening that I think would have just worried them even more. In some companies in the US, again, it varies from company to company, but in some companies, if someone gets sick and doesn't have enough paid sick days, they can ask their coworkers at the company to donate some of their sick days to them. So at some companies, if someone at the office is sick and will need to stay home, for example, for 4 weeks or something, but they only have 8 sick days, at some companies, an email can be sent out to the coworkers asking if they would like to donate some of their own sick days to the person so that they don't have to go without pay. And this doesn't even get into the fact, or maybe this is kind of a result of the fact, that there is often this idea in many companies in the US that if you come to work sick, that somehow shows some kind of dedication to the company or dedication to your job. And in some offices, if you stay home sick, there's a chance that this could be thought of as that you're not dedicated enough, because of taking care of your health. It just makes me so frustrated that I've seen that here in Germany, it is possible for things to work and run smoothly while doing it differently. Like, people in the US are struggling with this sick day system for no reason. There is a better way to do this, and it really frustrates me that companies in the US are still allowed to do it this way. So my question for you is, what are your thoughts on the different ways how sick leave is handled in Germany, the US, or other countries around the world? Please let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching this video, and thank you very much for all the interesting, thoughtful comments on my videos. I've said it before, I think it's so important to have respectful exchanges of thoughts and information, and I just really appreciate the conversations that people are having and the thoughts that people are sharing down in the comments. Thank you so much. If you enjoy my videos, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, and keep an eye out for new videos on Monday afternoons. And if you feel like it, it's always appreciated if you pass my videos or my channel along to your friends. Thank you so much for your support. And until next time, auf Wiedersehen.